Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome, Be Health Empowered family, to another week of Excuse Me Doctor. We want to welcome our viewers who are joining us on blackdoctor.org for the first time. Welcome to the Be Health Empowered family. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Clarke, and we are here every week from starting at Monday night, starting at 9 p.m. East Coast, 6 p.m. Pacific. And we're here to talk about health as it impacts you. We talk about it using science and evidence, facts and figures, not speculation. As a matter of fact, we have a weekly debunk every week where we take some piece of circulating misinformation and we explain using facts and figures why it's not accurate. So we're really glad you're joining us tonight. You can call me, by the way, Dr. Mel. That's how everybody knows me. And I also wanted to welcome those who are joining on the Facebook page. Please remember to hit like, and those on YouTube, please remember to hit subscribe. You know, we're all about engaging with you. So I would love if you would write your questions in the chat as we go along. But we always start the week with our weekly recap. And I would love to welcome my co-producers who do that with me every week, Lila Mays and Wayne Bruce. Thanks for joining me, y'all.
Hello,
Dr.
hello,
Mel.
hello.
Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey.
Hey,
We got a new home, y'all.
That's
we
right,
do. We do.
blackdoctor.org. I am happy to be here. So before we start our weekly recap, we actually this week for the first time are going to be having a special book giveaway.
Well, it looked like the book giveaway gave away. Let's see if we can get uh, our, our lovely Miss Lila Mays back in here. But it
Well,
looked
while we're getting her back, I can talk about what the book is that we give
okay.
away.
All
The
right.
book is actually called Excuse Me, Doctor, I've Got What? Taking Ownership of Your Health and Making Healthcare Work for You. It's a book that I wrote because I really saw that there was a need to empower people with the information that they need to navigate the healthcare system and take ownership of their own health so that they could really live the best, healthiest life possible. And so this book, Excuse Me, Doctor, I've Got What, is what this show is actually based on. And in recognition of the fact that this is our first time on blackdoctor.org, we figured it'd be a great way to kick off the show by having this book giveaway. So Lila, when she comes back, is going to explain to us how we're going to go about doing the book giveaway. And while we're waiting for her to come back, why don't we just launch into our weekly recap?
Let's launch into it. Minus Lila, and I've just heard there is a power outage in Los Angeles. So Lila's in Los Angeles. So we're gonna get back
Yeah.
to her. She's gonna get back. So we're gonna keep on with the recap, folks. Here we go. And we always start with the numbers, Dr. Mel. We start with the numbers. Where are we
Yes,
with the numbers? And we're talking about the numbers that unfortunately we have to bring up every week dealing with this terrible virus, coronavirus. So can you tell us where we are with the numbers?
absolutely. So we are over 33 million cases of COVID since the beginning of the pandemic over a year ago. But the good news is that the daily counts are starting to drop, have been dropping since January in all but a few states. Oregon and Michigan are two of those states in which, unfortunately, cases are going up. And then when it comes to the number of souls that we have lost to the coronavirus, we're at almost 600,000 deaths from COVID 19, around 591,000 right now. And again, we do have some good news on that front. You know, we were having 4,000 people dying a day back in January. That's dropped by almost 80%. So we're down to about between 300 and 600 people who are dying from coronavirus every day. That's 300 and 600 people too many, but it's still a vast improvement over where we were in January.
Yeah, that's terrible. So Lila is muted.
She is muted. She had a whole power outage. Her whole setup just went
Wow.
kaput.
Well,
And I
we're
was
glad
not
that
laughing
somehow
at the numbers.
Sorry.
you
I want everybody to know I was not laughing at the numbers. I was laughing at Lila Mays coming back into the studio.
We were laughing at the beautiful background he was
Yeah, I was
producing
giving.
for me.
I was.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we talked about the number of cases and we talked about death toll.
We
Yeah.
did, yeah, but we were about to talk about the number of vaccinations, which was a
Vaccinations.
high point. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get it, Dr. Mel.
So we're at 103 million. I almost said thousand, but really million Americans who've been fully vaccinated. That's over 30% of the population, and that's according to CDC data. The states that are doing great, Minnesota leads the pack
Wow.
for the 5th week in a row. I'm sorry, not Minnesota. My bad. Maine. Maine leads the pack for the 5th week in a row with over 40% of their population fully vaccinated. And unfortunately, the same folks that have been in the back, Mississippi and Alabama, and they're now joined by Utah, have less than 24% of their population vaccinated. So hopefully we're sending out some love and prayers to the folks at the back of the heap there to hopefully be able to bring more people into being vaccinated.
Did we hit all those points? Did we hit all the vaccination points, Dr. Mill? There was something I think that we were going to talk about.
did. Yeah, herd immunity.
That
There's a concern that we're not going to be able to reach herd immunity in time for the fall. And the reason why the fall is important is because, viruses in cold weather, respiratory viruses tend to hit people more aggressively during that time because we have to be indoors, etc. And so we're really hoping that we can hit that magic 75%, 80% vaccinated by then, because if we don't, there's a chance that there'll be more variants in the population and that those variants will circulate definitely among the people who are unvaccinated. And even for the people who are vaccinated, if there are variants that can evade the vaccine, there's a possibility that that might happen. So we're really hoping that at least 75% of the population is vaccinated by the fall.
let's hope.
Let's hope. So, Dr. Mel, a great friend of mine said he got his vaccine. He got 2 shots and he got COVID. So, are the vaccines really working?
The vaccines are really working. So it appears that fully vaccinated people over 65, and that's who we have the most data on, and they're the folks who are most at risk, right? They're 94% less likely to be hospitalized than unvaccinated people in the same age group. Now, that and even people who only got 1 vaccination are 64% less likely to get hospitalized. So now remember when the vaccine data was first published around the clinical trials and it said it was 94 to 95% effective, that still means that 4 to 5%, 5 to 6% of the time with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines that they're not going to be effective. But even people who do get sick, and that's the minority of people, I think 5,800 people have ended up in the hospital or tested positive for coronavirus out of 103 million people who've been vaccinated. So even with that very small number of people, you're less likely to be sick enough to be hospitalized and definitely less likely to, much, much, much less likely to die of COVID compared to, of course, the numbers that we gave out at the top of the show in terms of how many deaths and how many cases we've had. So it works. And all the data basically shows that if you're vaccinated, you probably won't get any symptoms at all if exposed to COVID. And even if you do, like I said, you probably won't end up getting full-blown COVID and ending up in the hospital.
Okay. So in that vein, there are a lot of folks I'm hearing that are going and getting that first dose and then not going back. Dr. Mel, can you give the people some advice about that second dose?
So I really encourage everybody to go back and get their second dose. But actually, you know what? Overall, we're doing pretty good with the second doses. I mean, I have to applaud my fellow Americans because only less than 8% of people have not gone back to get their second dose. Compare that to the shingles vaccine, 25% of people don't go back to get their second dose. So actually, we're looking pretty good. But for those 8%, I would say if it's because you're afraid of the side effects that you might have heard from the second shot, you have a couple options. You can actually get the Johnson & Johnson as your, well, I won't even say that. I'll just say don't be afraid of the side effects. Even if you get them, you can always take Tylenol. Make sure you're well hydrated beforehand. Just don't, arrange anything strenuous the 24 hours after you get your dose, because that tends to be when the symptoms of the side effects come in. And those, of course, are the fever and the chills, headache and fatigue. And if you're over age 55, you tend not to get any of those. You might get a little bit of fatigue. So, please don't let that be a barrier. And then for some people, they're concerned about inconvenience or they can't get the second appointment. Now there's so many options available because there's more supply than demand. So you can go to your corner pharmacy. There's still the mass vaccination sites. There are pop-ups. I even saw that they're going to have a vaccination event at a bar and restaurant in DC. So, they're really trying to get to where you are. Right, to get that second shot.
How good is it to mix alcohol in the shot?
Man, come get these shots, man.
Hey,
I'll have 2 shots. No, of alcohol. 1 shot of the vaccine. I mean, it sounds cool.
They're trying to meet people where they are.
It sounds great in theory. But when you order a tequila shot, I mean, do we really want that?
I don't think that's the intent. Okay. I don't know that they'll be serving alcohol that night.
All right.
I'm not sure of the details.
All right. We're just checking in. So look, I cut on the TV today, turned on the TV, however you want to say. We say cut on the TV where I'm from. And I see their new mask mandates from TSA and the CDC. And here in the area, Washington, D.C. area, there have been some new mask mandates too. So can you give us a little update on it, Dr. Mel?
Absolutely. They're all based on CDC recommendations. And it's really trying to let people know that there are some advantages to getting vaccinated. One of those is that when you're outside, and you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. And when you're exercising or dining outdoors, no masks are needed. And that's, of course, given that you're not in crowds. There's one exception, and that's even if you're vaccinated and your immune system is weakened by diseases like HIV or cancer, or if you're medically frail, you might still want to wear a mask even if you're vaccinated. And that's basically because when you're outside, the way that the coronavirus spreads, with the breeze dispersing the particles, it's easier to distance outside. The sunlight renders the virus less viable. So that's why these mandates are being updated. A lot of people still say they're confused. So I say it's 2 really simple rules of thumb. Number 1, if you're indoors, mask and distance. If you're outdoors, mask or distance. It's really simple to remember.
And or.
Exactly.
And or.
Yep. So that's it for the weekly recap. I'm wondering if we can go back to that book giveaway I talked while you were gone, Lila, in your blackout. We talked about what the book was and why we're giving away and how it relates to the show. So maybe you could explain to everybody what the rules of the book giveaway are.
Oh, sure. Fantastic. I'm glad you mentioned it. Yay. We are giving away a copy of Excuse Me, Doctor. I've got what? So listen, everybody on blackdoctors.org and in our excuse me doctor family who's been with us all this time. We are looking for some show suggestions. So what we're asking is that you give us 2 interesting suggestions, 2 in the comments. We're going to choose a winner. We're going to choose a winner and we will let you know in the comments. We will let you know who we chose and you will get your own, maybe even signed copy of Excuse Me, Doctor. I've got what?
Do we have pens now? You'll get your own signed copy. Okay. This is an Apple pen, so you can't really sign with this, Dr. Mel. But
yeah,
we'll make sure they're signed.
So
All
be
right.
sure you're following Dr. Mel on all of her social media platforms because we want to see a picture and hashtag and all of that. But we need 2 show topics in the comments.
How many? How many, Lila?
2.
There we go. Those fingers from outer space just came on screen.
Fantastic.
You know what's next, Dr. Mel?
Yes, I do. We're going to do the weekly debunk.
The weekly debunk. Stopping misinformation in its tracks. So Tanisha Twitter fingers hit us up and said, I went to this doctor's website and it says I don't need a COVID vaccine. I just need to buy some. Enter Dr. Mel.
Liposomal vitamin C, liposomal vitamin D3, quercetin, and pterostilbene advanced.
Off his website. And I'm good if I take that.
I don't know about that. Excuse me, Dr. Mel, is that true?
Well, this was an actual question that I got when I was speaking at a well-known university to their Black faculty and staff. And somebody entered this physician's website in the comments and asked that exact same question. So I think it's really important to realize that many people, healthcare professionals, are unfortunately making, and scammers, I won't even say it's just limited to healthcare professionals, are out to just make money by claiming that their formulations will cure COVID and relieve the need to get vaccinated. So this particular doctor has a history of controversial and unproven claims. He's received prior warnings from the FDA against using unproven devices to screen for breast cancer. He's also claimed that he has tanning beds that slash your risk of cancer, for which he was also censured by the Federal Trade Commission. And so now he has a website called Stop COVID Cold, where he markets these particular products. And he's been sanctioned by the FDA for misbranding these drugs and saying that that they cure COVID. So we know that vitamins are important in overall health. We know eating a balanced diet and making sure that your vitamin levels are therapeutic, especially vitamin D as in dog, is really important. But there's no proof that shows that it prevents you from getting COVID or can cure COVID in any way. Now, a lot of people have speculated about it, and I myself take vitamin D and vitamin C because I know that it's good to as a part of an overall healthy immune system. But an overall healthy immune system does not replace the need for vaccination. And the way that I normally talk about it is, I say, for example, being exposed to the coronavirus is like getting a pop test or a pop quiz in school. Imagine somebody came to you the night before and gave you all the answers to that pop quiz that you didn't know you were about to have. Well, that's what the vaccine does. It prepares you by giving you all the answers about how to address the coronavirus when you actually do come across it. It doesn't matter how smart you are with a pop test. You can still fail it if you don't know the answers. So that's the same thing. Doesn't matter how healthy you are or how great your immune system is. You have a higher chance of passing the test, but we don't 100% know if that's all you need. So it's great to think of vaccinations working in tandem with a healthy immune system rather than thinking of it as either or. And it's important to remember that not everybody with a DR in front of their name understands this distinction or means you well.
Come
so
on, Dr. Mel.
it's careful. It's important to be careful who you follow.
Come on, they could be just Dominican Republic in front of their name. I don't know, but it might not mean doctor.
Well, it's just important to be very conscious and deliberate about claims on social media. It's always good to corroborate it with other sources before you follow it. So that's my advice. And that is the debunk for this week. Thank you, Miss Lila and Mr. Wayne.
Put your comments in new show comments in the comments section, Miss Lila.
Absolutely.
All
And
right.
we're going to see them. We're going to see them later. But right now, we are going to talk about tonight's show topic. We have come through one of the most stressful periods in our lifetimes as a society. Anxiety and depression from the isolation of the pandemic, the economic conditions, the loss of life and loss of health to thousands of people due to this pandemic, or millions of people really due to this pandemic, has caused a large majority of people to struggle with sleep issues. People who've survived COVID even report that they have problems with sleep due to the effects of the virus and the infection itself. But even before the pandemic, people weren't getting enough sleep. Um, Unfortunately, some people even take pride in the fact that they can function on 4 hours sleep, while others pray just to be able to fall asleep. So there's so much lack of information about sleep out there and how important it is that I thought it was important to devote an entire show to talk just about sleep. So tonight, we're going to be talking awake with nowhere to go, how to get the sleep you need. And we are really blessed and fortunate to be joined by Dr. Barbara Hutchinson, who's the past president of the Association of Black Cardiologists. She's a managing partner of Chesapeake Cardiac Care, which is a cardiology practice in Maryland. She's board certified in both cardiovascular disease and sleep medicine, and she's a fellow of the American College of Cardiology. So all of that means she knows what she's talking about, and we are blessed and glad to welcome her here today. Hi, Dr. Hutchinson. I think you're on mute. You might want to come off of mute so we can hear your wisdom.
She's off.
Yes, you're off. I can hear you.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Glad that you're here.
Our goal is to keep everyone awake for the next few minutes while we talk about sleep.
Right. And then when the show is over, then they can go get some great sleep.
Absolutely.
So, I started off by saying that some people pride themselves in getting by with 4 hours sleep. What's really the right amount of sleep, and how does that requirement change with age?
That's a great question. Thanks again for having me, because sleep is such an important topic. Many people say, well, I'm rested even after sleeping 4 hours. But they've done studies actually, and the optimal number of hours of sleep that we need is anywhere from 7 to 9 hours. Now, when you are a baby sleeps half 12 hours, and they awake 12 hours. But as you get older, it's important to get at least 7 to 9 hours, because a lot of studies have shown when you get less than 6 hours, you have a lot of medical problems, and we can talk about some of those that's associated with that. But the other thing to know is that it's a bell curve. On the upper limit, if you have too much sleep, you could also have other medical problems. So 7 to 9 is that sweet spot, I like to call it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's talk about the medical problems. What are some of the things that can happen for both kids and adults if they're chronically not getting enough sleep?
Well, there are a lot of different sleep problems. And I think the one that 30% of the population has tends to be insomnia. And that is that inability to fall asleep or stay asleep or waking up much earlier than you would like to, and then can't go back to sleep. And that's the one we see a lot. The second one, which is about 20%, is what I like to call the sleep breathing disorders. That includes things like obstructive sleep apnea and central sleep apnea. So when we talk about the insomnias, for example, the insomnias, because you can't go to sleep, as you would imagine, if you can't sleep well at night, it results in several things during the day. The biggest one is excessive daytime sleepiness. And if you are at work and falling asleep, it can result in decreased productivity. It actually almost cost the government $63 billion in
Wow.
lost productivity because people fall asleep during the day or they lose their jobs. So it's very, very important.
Yeah, not to mention losing their jobs, but if their job is a trucker or driving or operating something really important, I could imagine that that would even have worse consequences. Um,
Absolutely.
and then what are some of the medical health effects of not getting enough sleep on a chronic long-term basis?
Sure. So if we talk about insomnia, the insomnia long term can result in several psychiatric problems, for example. You can have anxiety, you can have depression, you can have certain cardiovascular problems, actually. If you go hours and hours without getting good sleep, you can have things like during the day palpitation, you can have shortness of breath, a lot of other medical problems during the day.
And
So sleep,
when you say palpitations, you mean like a racing heartbeat or feeling like your
racing
heart's
heartbeat,
flip-flopping? Yeah.
flip-flopping, skipping, flipping
Mhm.
around, fluttering during the day.
Yep.
That can result from just not having enough sleep. I like to think of sleep as enabling us to simmer down after a really exciting day. So we simmer down at night, and then during the morning we get up and we go again. So we get to a height at night, you go to sleep, you simmer down, and you're ready for the next day. So sleep is very, very important because several things in our bodies rest while we sleep. And if you cannot get good sleep, it's like being on caffeine
Mhm.
365 days.
Yes. I love the Simmer Down because there's a song actually called Simmer Down. And so that brings me to, how do you simmer down at night? Are there certain things, habits that people should have that help them to simmer down or wind down at the end of a day?
Wonderful. That's a great, great question because uh, you have to prepare to go to sleep. So the first thing I would
Mhm.
say in terms of developing what I like to call good sleep hygiene, you have to get a good sleep schedule. What does that mean? Well, it means setting a time to wake up, setting a time to go to sleep. And more important, in the evening, avoid naps because if you nap in the evening, it kind of breaks that schedule. So that's the
Mhm.
first thing. Set a good sleep schedule. The second thing is you want to create a bedroom that is conducive to sleep. And what does that mean? Well, it should be dark, it should be quiet, comfortable bedding, the sheets, the mattress needs to be comfortable. And this one is important. What we've found is that the best sleep is with lower temperatures. So if it's about 65 to 70 degrees, that's really, really good. And it doesn't help
I
to have a great aroma during the night. So
Yeah.
that's the other one.
I hope my husband is listening, and the husbands of many wives who like the bedroom at 65. I hope they're all
Yes.
listening.
That's very important because the sleep is better the lower the temperature. The other one is that we need to develop a good pre-bedtime routine. I like to call it a wind down activity routine. So even if you listen to music, is that calm, relaxing, could be jazz. If you're doing any exercise, it should just be stretch exercises. You shouldn't go run a 5 mile just before bedtime and dim the lights. It's good right after dinner, start dimming the lights, even having a nice warm shower that can help. And very important, and I'll stress this one, disconnect from electronics. That includes
Mhm.
the cell phone, the laptop, and the tablet. How many times we've fallen asleep with the light from all three of those blaring in our faces? And the
Yeah.
reason for that is, remember, we said darkness because that little substance that's produced in our brain that enables us to go to sleep likes darkness. So that's the other one. Develop a good bedtime routine. And this one may sound kind of counterintuitive, but develop good habits during the daytime. because
Mhm.
developing good daytime habits enables you to sleep best at night. What does that mean? During the day, enjoy the sunlight, enjoy the light exposure, decrease your alcohol, caffeine, and tobacco intake later in the day, such that makes it easier for you to go to sleep. And this one is sometimes a difficult one, is really avoid eating a heavy meal very late at night. It's
Mhm.
important after you eat to give yourself a good 3 hours before you go to lie down. And so sometimes if you lie down on a full stomach, you could imagine that's really difficult. You twist and turn and just can't go to sleep.
Yeah.
So those are
And
some of the key things that we can do.
thank you for that. I mean, you hit so many key points. And I think one thing to just remember is, as we have evolved as human beings, before we had electricity and the option of electronics, our bodies, were regulated by sunlight and
Exactly.
lack thereof. And so we've evolved to be able to sleep in the dark. And
Right.
so when we disrupt that by having the lights on late at night and all those things that you mentioned,
Mhm.
it really disrupts that. And the other thing that you said that is kind of common sense, and our parents probably taught us that when we were young, is about eating late at night because
Yes,
our GI tract has to have a chance to rest too, right? So
absolutely.
if you're eating late at night, your GI tract's not getting a chance to really chill out like the rest of your body does.
Sure,
So,
sure.
so how you mentioned two different kinds of sleep, insomnia and then the breathing issues. How do you know if you have a breathing issue associated with sleep? One of those medical reasons for not being able to sleep.
Right. The biggest one I like to touch on is obstructive sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea is simply you stop breathing for at least 10 seconds when you go to sleep or while you're sleeping. And believe it or not, we're all allowed to stop breathing up to 5 times. But this is graded mild, moderate, and severe. If you stop breathing anywhere from 5 to 15, that's mild. 15 to 30, that's moderate. And if you stop breathing more than 30 times in 1 hour, that is considered severe sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea. So you may say, well, how do I know if I have obstructive sleep apnea? Well, this one may step on a few corns. The first one is loud snoring. We know that 90% of people who snore, and by the way, I'm talking now to both men and women, because so often we point fingers. Oh, I hear you snoring. And the other one says, I hear you snoring. Well, guess what? Both of you may
Both of
have the
you are
same problem.
snoring.
The
I
next,
resemble that remark.
so that's one. Loud snoring, you have to wonder, is there something else that's going along with my snoring?
Mhm.
The second one is that you hear people say, all of a sudden they're snoring and then you hear them stop. That is what we call witness apnea, where they just stop breathing. The other one people may describe, oh, I wake up in the middle of the night choking, gasping for air. That's another sign that you have to wonder what's going on while they're sleeping. Excessive tiredness during the day. You could have slept 8 hours. When you wake up, you could go back to sleep for another 2 to 3 hours. So that excessive fatigue means your sleep was not effective. If you've slept 8 hours and still sleepy, your sleep is not effective. So it's what we call unrefreshed sleep. The other one is waking up every day with a dry mouth. Means you may be snoring, your mouth falls wide open, and the mouth is dry. So you have to wonder, is your mouth dry because you're snoring? And are you snoring
Right.
because you have a sleep problem? Another big one is a morning headache. Waking up every morning with a headache. And why is this important? Because when you stop breathing during that period of time, there's decreased oxygen that's getting to the brain. And that often manifests itself during the day as headache. The other one that I often talk about is just being around such that people like you when you wake up in the morning. Have you heard of those people waking up on the wrong side of the bed? They're just so
Oh,
angry, a foul mood. So, mood disorders can also suggest that there's something going on with your sleep. And finally, a foggy memory, not as sharp as you used to be. Can't remember numbers, memory losses, These are all some of the signs that could suggest that you may have a sleep breathing problem. And as a cardiologist, there is a relationship between sleep breathing problems and the heart. And what could some of those problems be? Well, if you have high blood pressure, you're on 5 medications, your blood pressure is still high, resistant, is there something else? Shortness of breath, that is not lung, it's not heart, you just always short of breath. You need to figure out why. Skips in the heart during the day, you sitting, uh, chest pain at night, only at night when you lie down in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., or these exacerbations, like I call it, of heart failure at night. So these are some of the things, as you see them, you should ask yourself, what is going on during my sleep that could be contributing
Right.
to any of this?
Right. Those are all excellent points. And the common root problem is your body is not getting enough oxygen. Your heart's not getting enough oxygen. It makes
Yes.
your blood pressure go up. It's stressing
Mhm,
your system, and you're
mhm.
seeing all those things. And now, tell us about these sleep disorders, and African Americans, because I believe that we have that disproportionately as African Americans, don't we?
That we have everything disproportionately,
Yeah,
and that includes sleep.
unfortunately.
Absolutely. And it tends to be more common in men than in women. But the statistics that is most distressing is the fact that up to 80% of people that have moderate or severe obstructive sleep apnea, it goes unnoticed.
Hmm.
Goes unnoticed. I like to
Yeah.
tell this. I like to share this, especially for the men or the wives that may be listening. I tell the story of a young 26-year-old that I met. Her husband had sleep apnea, and every night she would nudge him when he stopped breathing. But he decided to go to his friend's house to look at a game. After the game, he had a few drinks, and guess what? He fell asleep at his friend's house. His friends did not know he had obstructive sleep apnea. And as you could imagine, the next morning he had no one to nudge him, no one to wake him up, and he actually died. And you
Wow.
could imagine the guilt she's lived with because she
Yeah.
kept just nudging him as opposed to nudging him to seek help. And that's
Yeah.
so important. So I'm hoping that people who have heard some of the signs that they would really try to seek further help.
Right. And help basically means telling your primary care doctor or your heart doctor or your lung doctor that, you snore a lot and that you want to get tested for sleep apnea. People who are overweight, who have large necks, who have any of the symptoms that Dr. Hutchinson mentioned, should, seek out help, to get it diagnosed. And how is it diagnosed, Dr.
Well, now
Hutchinson?
it's very easy. Now you could diagnose it at home. You can start with a home sleep monitoring, and there's several different home sleep monitoring devices that you can take home. You could use it one night. You get it the data downloaded, and they can tell whether you have sleep apnea. And it's
Mhm.
also treatable, very treatable.
Yeah. And so, that's I think we've covered a lot about sleep apnea. I want to bounce back to a second to the insomnias that you mentioned, because a lot of people might say, well, um why can't I just take my Benadryl over the counter like I always do,
Mhm,
and fall asleep?
mhm.
What would be the concern with just doing that, taking Benadryl for problem
Well,
sleep?
first of all, if you have sleep apnea, it's very important that you do not treat yourself and you seek the help of a sleep physician to help you through it. Because if you have insomnia, the treatment for insomnia is not band aids in the form of Benadryl, Lunester, melatonin, all those medications. In fact, there have been studies showing that some of these medications can cause complex sleep problems, resulting with you eating and driving while you're sleeping, that could cause other problems. So it's important. The treatment for insomnia is what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, where you try to change things. We talked about some of the sleep hygiene, changing things, setting the time to go to sleep, the cognitive part, all together. that is much better than a band-aid of just a pill, because the pill itself can cause other problems. You know, the
Yeah.
excessive daytime sleepiness too that you can get from Benadryl.
Yeah. And also too, I've read studies that associate chronic Benadryl use in middle age and with later onset of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So
Absolutely.
and there's also association with untreated insomnia with Alzheimer's. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. Untreated insomnia can lead to Alzheimer's, as well as up to 30%. Chronic insomnia can cause type 2 diabetes mellitus. So
Yes,
both of those,
absolutely.
which are chronic disorders, that's why it's important to nip it in the bud early, on something that is truly long lasting, as opposed to a temporal agent like a medication.
Absolutely. So, I don't want to hog up all your time with just my questions. I want to bring our producers back in, Lila and Wayne, and see if they have any audience questions.
Well, there
We
are
do.
we do there there's so many questions and comments in the chat. I would just like to thank everybody. I didn't say think. Thank everyone for putting those questions in the
It's
chat
that,
and
it's
great
that DC
information.
accent. That's
It's
okay.
DC accent. I really, Dr. Hutchinson, you have some great information, and I had my finger on the button to cut you off and put you on mute when you start talking about having to have the bedroom at 65.
I'm glad you didn't put me on
But
mute, because other
I
people
did
want.
not mute that for you, doctor. And it's something that men and their wives struggle with the thermostat.
Battle over all the time.
It's the thermostat struggle. So
Yes.
let me, Lila, do you want to start?
I do. I do.
Mhm.
So this is for Dr. Hutchinson. Can you describe the relationship between lack of sleep and dementia and Alzheimer's? Actually, this is for both of you.
Right. There, there was a study that was recently published, that showed that people, especially if you have decreased sleep in your 40s, in your 50s, in your 60s, you have an increased chance of developing dementia. But that was as far as in chronic insomnia. But even in people with sleep breathing disorder, the chronic hypoxia that they have every night when they have these apneic episode, long term, it can cause damage to some of the brain cells that result in dementia.
Wow.
And that
And
dementia I've seen in some of the patients with severe sleep apnea, by the way, as it's treated, it improves as they've
Wow.
that's
treated
great
for
news.
obstructive sleep. Yes.
That is great
Mhm.
news. So, the other thing I'd like to add is, so in the book, Excuse Me, Doctor, I actually have a whole chapter on sleep and mentioned a lot of the sleep hygiene tips that Dr. Hutchinson so eloquently ran down. And one of the things that I say is the time that you sleep. Happens, the reason why it's recommended between 7 and 9 hours is there's different stages of sleep, and as you go into
Yes.
those different stages of sleep, your brain is actually opening up certain channels that allow for the cleaning of waste products that build up during the day to be released. And if they're
Mhm.
not released, then it's like the trash not being taken out, right? And that
Mhm.
leads to inflammation, or irritation in your nervous system. And that's one of the reasons why it's thought that there's a greater association with not just Alzheimer's, but other neurologic diseases as well.
Mhm.
Wow.
Great. Thank you.
So we have a
You up,
question.
Wayne?
Yeah, we have a question from Alice Green. What is a good time to stop eating at night?
A good time, depending on what time you go to bed, this is how I'll answer that question. You go back at least 3 hours. So if you normally go to bed at 9 o'clock, you should not be eating after 6 o'clock. And as a matter of fact, you should cut off your meal at about 5 o'clock to give yourself a good 3 hours to digest all the meat and potatoes that you ate, such that when you're lying in the bed, those juices in the stomach are not churning to digest the food and resulting with you also having acid reflux. I can see you not trying to mute my button again.
I really, I really wasn't really. That's great information. I don't want to. I I like to keep it fun here, but the information is will save that information. Kind of information saves lives, and
Sure. And
Indeed.
in terms of eating, because we all have to eat. One way of getting around that is you can have the heavier meal earlier in the day and just have something lighter in the afternoon.
mhm.
And that's one way, because if you have something lighter, there's less to digest. So that's one way of getting around that. If you want to have the heavier meal earlier in the day, like in some countries, that's popular. You have your heavy meal
Mhm.
between 12 and 2 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have another question from Pamela Canaday Chapman. Can weight gain bring on sleep apnea?
That's a great question. And yes, if you are obese, that is one of the risk factors for obstructive sleep apnea. But I will also say if you weigh 100 pounds or you're very slim, you can also have sleep apnea because it's obstructive. So it all depends on how crowded the back of your throat is. So you could weigh
Mhm.
100 pounds and with a crowded throat in the back, as the anesthesiologist would tell us, you could still
Mhm.
develop apnea. So,
Okay.
yes, weight gain, especially neck size in both women greater than 15 inches and greater than 17 inches in men, you are at risk of having obstructive sleep apnea.
Okay.
I don't think, Lila, I don't think we're
I'm
going to
gonna.
invite Dr. Hutchinson back. Not at all. I'm,
We are. She
I,
has amazing
She
information.
has some,
I
yeah,
want
some
to
some
some
breakthroughs
amazing
she's dropping
information.
here.
I want to piggyback on that because there are lots of questions that are related to sleep apnea. So this is a two-parter. How is it treated? And if you say CPAP machine, are there less bulky machines now than the big bulky ones that we've seen for years?
Okay. I love that question because that's often what prohibits people from even going to get tested, even if they suspect that they have it. So, off the top, CPAP is not the only way of treating obstructive sleep apnea. If you have mild obstructive sleep apnea, you can now be fitted by your dentist with what we call a device that pulls your jaw forward or backwards. So it adjusts your
Wow.
jaw to open up the back of your airway. So that's one way. And that's just, it looks like a retainer, but it's what I like to call an adjustable retainer because you can turn the little screws on the side and it either pulls your jaw forward or backwards, again, opening up the back. So that's one way. The second way is CPAP, but the CPAP is just that air that is pushed in. It's not oxygen. And what people really complain about mainly is the mask. And everybody thinks about this Darth Vader mask that covers your whole face. Believe it or not, there's some non-intrusive masks that just fit under the nose. You can start off looking at television, your eyes. It's not intrusive at all. And you can put it on before you even fall asleep. So that's the second one. There are a lot of different types of headgear or masks that you can use under the nose, or nose and mouth, depending on if you're a mouth breather. So that's number two. Number three, now, you could also have surgery where they just go into the back of your throat and just clear stuff away. Shave off part of your tongue, shave off part of your uvula, that part that hangs down in the back, to just make the passage back there wider. But the thing about that some people don't know, the structures grow back
oh,
and
okay.
Oh.
after they've had the surgery. So that can happen.
Wow.
But now there is a newer technique. It almost looks like a pacemaker. It's something that is implanted under the collarbone, And what it does, it paces the muscle on the bottom of the chin that keeps the back of the mouth open. So when you go to bed, you just turn it on and it paces while you're sleeping to keep things open. There's no mask, there's nothing. So there's
Well, I've
several different things that you can use. It's like a pacemaker. You turn it on and off. When you go to bed, you turn it off. When you wake up, you turn it off.
That's pretty
Wow.
cool. You just
It
taught me
is.
something, Dr. Hutchinson. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have a few questions, and one is about, and a lot of them are about melatonin. And here's
Yes.
one. Comes from Sharon Mack. Thanks for the much needed information. I struggle with chronic insomnia. Thoughts about melatonin supplement for insomnia. Please advise. That is also piggyback with, is too much melatonin a problem? And I believe that
Yeah.
was Yvonne Smith.
Yes. So right now on the market, melatonin, remember I told you melatonin is that substance that we produce that causes us to go to bed
Mm-hmm.
in the dark. And so the thought is that it could be that the amount that our body is producing is not enough. So if I should supplement it, that would help. The only problem with that is that it is not regulated by the FDA. And because it's not regulated by the FDA, depending on who you purchase the melatonin from, you can range from having some melatonin in the supplement versus none. They've done studies where they've actually tested the content of the melatonin in the products, and it was not what was written on the bottle. And again, because it's not regulated. And that's the other reason why it's best to start with cognitive behavioral therapy as opposed to medication. The second part of that question, could too much melanin be bad? Yes, because there have been studies that show that too much of these substances could also cause what we call complex sleep problems. Complex sleep problems, we're getting into people sleeping, they waking up, eating raw food, eating everything inside, driving a car, getting an accident, or even killing people all while sleeping. Those are all complex sleep problems that you can have.
Wow.
Wow.
And and I'm sure someone has a question about alcohol and marijuana for sleep.
For
Sure.
sure. That's what I was looking
As
for.
and that's a big one. But
Yeah.
what I would say about a lot of the sleep aids now may have CBD as part of it, along with melatonin. But it's very important to realize that neither marijuana nor any of the synthetic medical cannabis products should be used to treat things like obstructive sleep apnea. There's not enough data surrounding that to support that in any way. So right now, in terms of the therapy to treat obstructive sleep apnea, as we talked about, the CPAP, the dental devices, the stimulators, or even surgery, but no studies so far showing. As a matter of fact, you could have the opposite happen if you take too much of the CBD, whether it is CBD or THC. You could end up with even excessive sleepiness during the day from excessive intake.
Yeah. And of course, alcohol should never be used for sleep, because what happens is it doesn't give you restful sleep, and you end
Yes.
up waking up as soon as it wears off, and sometimes you have problems falling back asleep. It doesn't take you all the way down to that deep, restful REM sleep that we all need to recover. So, in order to get to the book giveaway, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to take a break from this wonderful information that Dr. Hutchinson has given us tonight. Thank you so much for being here
Pleasure.
with us. We really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Dr. Hutchinson. This was awesome.
This was incredible, Dr. Hutchinson, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
So there are lots of show suggestions. Brother Wayne, have you? I've chosen my winner. I don't know
Wow.
if you've looked at show suggestions,
I have looked at a
but
great deal,
a
and
lot.
you guys are really coming with a lot of great show suggestions. So
So how are we going to decide?
well, I
Well,
don't want
he
to be
and
the
I
bad
had
guy. I'm not the bad guy. Send all your bad comments to Lila.
you can send them to me. So we're gonna do this. We have a winner. We did a
Okay.
little bit of deliberation behind the scenes. Just a little. We did a little deliberating behind the
All
scenes to
right.
make
All
it
right.
fair.
And I'm not involved in any of this. I just want y'all to
Dr.
know.
Mill is not involved. She was
I'm,
hosting the whole show.
She
yep.
She had a
she's a
whole show
whole
to host.
host.
A
She's a
whole
whole
host
show host.
entirely. So, Mr. Musician, drum roll, please.
Brrrr, psh. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on.
And
Hold on,
oh,
hold on, hold
we
on,
we
hold
have
on.
we have
Hold,
sound
hold,
effects
hold,
now.
hold. We do have sound effects. Don't get me started, because we do have some sound effects. I gotta find them. Hold on, hold on, hold on.
Is this
So, but
prolonging the anticipation
And we don't have a
yes,
drum
while he
roll in the
looks for
sound
the?
effects.
that's
We just
okay.
have
That's all right.
we have a
Yay!
winner.
We have a winner. Excuse me, doctor. I've got what is going to Tanae Holly. Her suggestions for show topics are how to fight COVID-19 weight. So this might have been a little personal reason that I chose this winner. No. How to fight COVID-19 weight. And number two, getting fit after 60.
Wow.
Wow, those are great
I'm
Yeah.
looking for
topics.
her comment.
Okay.
I'm looking for
She's
her
on
All
Black
comment.
right.
Doctor Dot. She's on BDO. That's where I
Okay.
found
Go ahead, Tanae. I
yeah,
see.
All right. Well, thank
Let me
you,
pull
Tanae.
her up.
yeah.
Let me pull her up.
Congratulations.
Hold on. Let me pull up Tanae, because Tanae, there it is. She's in the comments right there. Tanae is doing her thing. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Yay,
'Cause it
All
sounds
Tanae.
like she's
right.
gonna have a
So
party.
I will be I will be autographing the book that goes out to you.
Hold
Thank you for
on.
your
Yeah.
Hold
suggestions, and
on.
thank you everybody for your
Hold on.
suggestions.
I'm gonna give away my own book. I'm going to give away my own book
Uh-oh.
of Excuse Me, Doctor. I'm going to buy a book and give it away, because I saw another great one. I saw
Okay.
another great, a great, I'm getting to it, a great show. And it's
Uh-oh.
from Tracy Walls. And she says,
Okay.
Yes.
yes, getting your
Yes.
affairs in order. Getting
Great.
the
Yep.
Oh,
importance of getting your
yes.
affairs in order. Just
Yes,
because
very
you will
important.
have because you have a will doesn't mean you're going to die. And we don't plan to fail. We failed to plan. I don't know. Tracy, she won it. I'm not going to repeat everything. I'm going to buy the book and give it to her. So Tracy
Oh,
Walls.
that's a great. Yeah, we could talk about advanced directives and medical powers of attorney
Yes.
and
Yes.
all those things. Having the
All of
conversation
that.
with your loved ones, starting at age 18. All of that. Most
Okay.
All
definitely.
of that.
All
So
right.
Tracy and Tanae, we will be in touch to get your information so we can get these books out to you. Thanks to everyone for participating.
And that's
And
the
so that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much to our audiences out there. Thank you to the new BDO audience for joining us. We will be right back here next week, 9 p.m. East Coast time, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Pacific. And until I see you again, remember, be wise, be well, and be health empowered. Thank you to my guests and my producers.